Hello and welcome to Budget Wah, where we help you make the most of your hobby dollars. Today we'll be going through a tier list of all Kruleboyz purchases currently available as of June 2022. So to quickly go over how we'll be ranking the available Kruleboyz purchases, we'll be going over every Kruleboyz purchase, both box sets and individuals, everything except the Rogue Idol, because he's a Bone Splitters unit, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. But everything else will be here. And we'll have three categories where we'll be ranking each purchase, both by value, in terms of what you get for your money, aesthetic, how good they look, and gameplay. And for gameplay, I'm not a particularly competitive player, but we'll be considering both how they fare competitively as well as how fun they are to play on the table. Value is going to break ties, given that this is Budget Wah, especially for the box sets where you're looking to get the most bang for your buck. And then prices will be listed both on what's available on the Games Workshop website, the MSRP, as well as discounted prices widely available, whether it be through Amazon, your friendly local game store, or eBay. So to start us off, we'll be going through the box sets and other purchases, and we'll start with the Battletome. So the Orc Warclans Battletome, I actually really like it. It's nice that it includes both Kruleboyz, Ironjaws, Bone Splitters, so if you want to branch into other armies, you've got it all in this book. However, for value, I only gave it a C. Games Workshop charges quite a bit for these Battletomes. It's not a particularly thick book. It's $55 at base price. You can find it in stores with a discount or on Amazon for $45. I gave it an A plus for aesthetic though. I love the cover art. There's a lot of wonderful art and pictures of models in the book. And as gameplay wise, I gave it an A, mostly because for one, you kind of need it to really play Kruleboyz unless you're, finding the rules elsewhere, which more power to you if you do, but I don't necessarily condone that. And also, the rules are good. They're fun. They're flavorful. Kruleboyz aren't in the best spot competitively right now, but I really love this Battletome. Overall, I put it in the B tier, mostly based on it being pretty expensive for what you get. There's no digital version available either, which is a shame. Next is Dominion Box. If you've watched any other videos on this channel, you know that I think the Dominion Box is a fantastic value right now, given that it's so heavily discounted because too many of them were made, which is great for us. You can pick it up for, at the time of this video, I saw it going on Amazon online for about $120, giving it an S++ with garlands for value. Aesthetic, I give it an A. I think the models you get in this box are absolutely beautiful. That's why I fell in love and pre-ordered it immediately and actually paid full price for the box about a year ago, and I'm still very happy with it. And gameplay wise, I give it a B. Specifically for Kruleboyz, the units you get in this box, you get a couple staples. You get the Swampcalla Shaman, you get Gutrippas, but there's no command features. You don't get a banner, you don't get instruments, which is really kind of obnoxious. And then you get Man-Skewer Boltboyz. The other models you get in the box are nice to have. They're beautiful models. They're not the most compelling on the table, which we'll talk about as we talk about them individually later on. Overall, though, I have to put Dominion in the S tier. Next, we'll talk about the starter sets, which all of them, I honestly think if you can afford to pick up a Dominion box, you really shouldn't mess with any of these, but this one is horrible. Do not buy the Extremis Starter Box. I've been wanting to get this off my chest. I don't know what they were thinking, pricing it at nearly the same price as Dominion sold for full price, 185 bucks, when you get so much less. Even comparing it to the Harbinger, the mid-range starter box, all you get extra in this is 4 pieces of terrain and a little piece of scatter for almost $100 more. So don't buy this. Aesthetic, I give it a B minus. You get your Gutrippas, some Hobgrots, the Swampcalla Shaman. I give it a B in gameplay only because you get that Swampcalla Shaman, which is probably the highest value thing in the box, focusing on the Kruleboyz side, of course. F tier, easy. Next slide. A Harbinger starter box kind of suffers from the same issue, but little bit better value. You can find them for $85 to $100 online. Still not a great bang for your buck. I mean, it is technically a discount compared to buying the units in this buck individually, but it's not a discount compared to buying these units on eBay. You get a unit of Gutrippaz, a unit of Hobgrots, and a Swampcalla Shaman, and then of course the Stormcast half as well. Aesthetic, I give it a B minus, and for gameplay, I give it a B, similar to the last box. You lose out on the terrain, but there are much better ways to get terrain than paying 100 extra bucks for 4 pieces. Um, I put it in the C tier. There could be reasons to buy this if you're looking to not have so many models or spend quite so much money to start, but you'd really be better off going with Dominion or this next set, the Warrior Starter Box. The Warrior Starter Box, if you're going to buy a starter box, I would actually recommend getting this one for a couple reasons. I give it a B for value. You can find it for 42 to 50 bucks, and you get everything you need to kind of dip your toes in the water with the game. You get some rulers, you get some dice, you get only one unit of troops and one hero on each side, so you're probably going to want to expand to be able to actually play the game. But if you split this with a friend, 25 bucks each, there is value to spending less money to get started with the hobby. Even though Dominion is clearly a better value overall, $125, that is still steep for a lot of us. So just to keep in mind. Aesthetic, I give it an A. I mostly because I really like the Stabgrot and the Killaboss model, but for the same reason, I give it a C for gameplay. The Killaboss with Stabgrot is not as useful or compelling in the actual game as the Swampcalla Shaman. I went ahead and actually put this one in the B tier. I think it's a solid purchase. You could purchase it even if you just wanted more Gutrippaz, although you don't get the command options, of course. Next, we'll talk about the Gutrippa Paint Set. I actually think this is a nice little pickup if you're brand new to the hobby or just want to get into the painting side of things. You get 6 pots of paint, a starter brush, and 3 Gutrippa models for about 30 bucks. That's pretty good value. GW charges a lot for their paints, but their paints are pretty nice. The brush I can't comment on as much. I don't own any GW brushes. I think they're overpriced, but I understand they're reasonable quality. Good place to start. Nice they throw that in. Aesthetic, I give it a B. I love the Gutrippa models. They're actually some of my favorite models in the game, but I took some points off here because the paints that you get, you're not going to be able to paint them up to the quality of what you see in artwork, which is not what you want to be doing when you're starting anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But they don't include a black paint or a white paint or a primer, which you're going to really want, so that's why I took some points off there. Give it a D for gameplay, only because you're never really going to be able to use these Gutrippas in the game unless you're able to find 7 more. You're probably just going to end up having to buy 10 anyway, but it is nice to have test models to practice your painting. But that's why I gave it such a low score for gameplay. I put it in the C tier overall, with the caveat that if you're a beginner and want to learn to paint, I would probably put it more up in the B or even A tier, so just keep that in mind. All right, so next we'll talk about the Getting Started magazine. It's $15. There's not many discounts available for this. It's already pretty cheap, but it goes for about 13 bucks on other websites. I give it a C for value with a heavy caveat here that I'm really glad this exists. I'm really glad that they have this for people who just want to build their first model, that you can get one without paying an exorbitant price. You don't have to pay 50 bucks. You don't have to pay 100 bucks to get your hands on a model to build for the first time. You can pick up this magazine. It'll walk you through the hobby. You get 2 really nice models. I gave it an A. The Gutrippaz and Vindictors I think look fantastic. Gameplay, of course, D. Similar thing. These are kind of going to be test models. It's nice to have some extras around, but you need units of 10 or 5 for the 2 models you get respectively. You're probably not going to be able to really use them in the game without buying more. I went ahead and put it in the C tier. Again, with the caveat that if you're a beginner, would move up in value. Next, we'll talk about the Boss Krew. This is my other despised set that GW has put out there. They did something similar with the Indomitus box that was an equally bad deal, but this one's even worse given that Dominion is so widely available. It goes on the GW website for 115 bucks. Pay $5 more, you can get the entire Dominion box. So for $5, you can get 55 extra models. Do not buy this. Do not buy this. You can buy the same sprue on eBay for 45 bucks if you really want some more of these units. Aesthetic, I give it an A, and gameplay, I give it a B because the Man-Skewer Boltboyz are really useful, and these 5 models are actually probably about my favorite in the whole Dominion box. They're great models, but I put those in lowercase because I'm not factoring that in at all because it's such a bad value F tier. Okay, so the next, last of the box sets is going to be the Warcry Kruleboyz box. This is a great pickup if you can find it for a good price. I put an asterisk on the discounted price because I found one at a friendly local game store for 65-ish bucks, which was awesome. It goes for 80 on the GW website if they have it in stock. For value, I give it an A. Mostly because the 2 units you get in here, you get a unit of multi-part Gutrippaz, and you get a unit of multi-part Boltboyz. These are your bread and butter battle line units for the army, and you just need these for Kruleboyz. And the multi-part units, they are a lot nicer than the monopose units you get in Dominion. It's really fun to build, and you get different options, different heads, different weapons options. And not that you probably want to use the Hakkas, but if you are just in it for the aesthetics, the Hakkas look really cool. Aesthetics, I give it an S. These are everything I love about Gutrippaz and just more of it. Everything I love about the Boltboyz and more of it. And gameplay, I give it an S because these are both great units to have. For that, I put this in the S tier along with the Dominion box, especially if you can get it for a reasonable price. Next, we'll be talking about the individual units. So moving right along, we'll talk first about Hobgrot Slittaz. These go for $55, MSRP $45, in stores. You can get them for $11 on eBay. Nobody really wants more of these if they bought more Dominion boxes, so there's a lot of people selling them. I give them a D for value, just given that the price is so high for what you get. You do get 20, so it's 2 units. Aesthetic, I give them a B. I actually think these are great looking goblin models if you're looking to build a goblin army for something like Dungeons and Dragons. I think that picking them up for 11 bucks if you're into other hobbies or other skirmish games and you just want some cool looking goblins, like $11 is a steal. But I take some away because in terms of gameplay, I give it a C. Now, I think that Hobgrots have a good place in the army. They're a good chaff unit to set up screens and block. I give it a C largely because they're not the most compelling unit to play with, and you probably aren't going to want a whole lot more of them than you would get in one Dominion box or one half of the Dominion box. So there's not really strong reasons to buy more of these unless you just don't have them and want some, in which case you can find them pretty cheap. It's worth mentioning that the box sold on its own by GW and what you get in Dominion is exactly the same, and both have all the command options. For that, I put it in the D tier overall. Next, we'll be talking about the Man-Skewer Boltboyz, the multi-part kit. In terms of value, I actually give this a D. If there were not better ways to purchase Man-Skewer Boltboyz available, I probably would have given it a C. It's pretty typical GW price scheme. Discounted, you can pick them up for $42-ish, and you can get the monopose units on eBay for 35 bucks. For aesthetic, I give it an A+. These are great looking models. You get some great options in terms of there's a couple different helmets. You get the banner to make your boss stand out more clearly. And for gameplay, I give them an S+. Boltboyz are widely considered to be the most competitive unit in Kruleboyz. They tend to make the core of people trying to make more competitive lists. Not that Kruleboyz are the most competitive army to begin with, but lots of lists run 2 units of 9 of these. So even though the value's not great, you'll probably end up picking up some of these if you're trying to run a list like that, unless you want to just go for eBay, just because you probably don't need, 60 Gutrippas from buying them all from, box sets. For all those reasons, I do put the Man-Skewer Boltboyz up in the B tier just because their importance on the tabletop, their aesthetic is wonderful. Even though I gave them a D for value, I think those things make up for it. And if you're looking to run a competitive list, you'll probably end up buying a box or two of these at some point. Okay, next let's talk about Gutrippaz. I love Gutrippaz. I think they're some of the best looking models in the game, not just in Kruleboyz. Personal taste, obviously biased because I love Kruleboyz. But for value, I give them an F. Now, the only reason I give them an F is because there are multiple cheaper ways to get these. For example, for the same price as buying a box of these from Games Workshop, you can get the Warrior box from Games Workshop for $5 less, and you get a hero and all the Stormcast stuff. Now, there's a heavy caveat to that in that they kind of pulled a fast one on us and didn't give us the banner or the musician options, which is kind of a problem in the game, but there are ways to kind of get around this through kit bashing. You can pick up the Monopose Gutrippaz for $25 on eBay. Now, in terms of aesthetic, I give them an S, of course. Gameplay, I give them a B. They're your bread and butter battle line. They're your only battle line if you don't play big yellers, but most people play big yellers. And I think they're fun. I think they're neat. So for all those reasons, I did end up putting them in the D tier. Not trying to hate on the Gutrippaz themselves. I love Gutrippaz. I would just say if you're going to get them through Dominion or get them in the Warcry box or even the Warrior box. Next is the Beast-Skewer Killbow. In terms of value, I actually give it a B. You can find one for about $30. It's 130 points on the tabletop. Aesthetic, I give it an S. It's like a little diorama in and of itself. I think it's an awesome looking artillery piece for the army. Gameplay, I give it a B. Now, this is with a heavy caveat that I'm giving it a B from a strictly Timmy perspective. It's a lot of fun to roll a bunch of dice when this thing hits. It's kind of, if you're not familiar, what happens is you get one shot with this unit, and if it hits, you get a roll dice equal to the number of wounds of the unit that you hit, so up to 12. So you've got a now the wound output is capped at 12 wounds, but it's just fun to roll a ton of dice and watch your opponent sweat a little bit if you actually get one of these things off. Now, from a competitive perspective, I would have given it a lower rank on the gameplay scale because it's not the most competitive thing. You probably want to be running Boltboyz over this if you're playing in a tournament or something. However, I like it a lot. I put it in the B tier. I'm happy I bought one. It's a fun model. Okay, next is the Marscrawla Sloggoth. I gotta admit that I'm personally horribly biased against this thing because I think it looks horrendous. It just that thing on the bottom, like what? I don't know what that is. It looks like a deranged Dobby from Harry Potter. I gave it a C minus for value. It's $55 for these things. In my opinion, that money would be much better put towards a Snatchaboss for the same price. Aesthetic, I give it an F. I think the goblins on top look really cool. I think this has great kit bash potential. If I were to ever run one of these, I think I would find something else to put on the bottom and just put the little goblin card on top of a different mount because I hate that thing on the bottom so much. But gameplay, I give it a C minus. It's got some interesting rules. It doesn't benefit from venom encrusted weapons, which I think is a kind of sad. And also it gives you like a little aura of +1 to hit, but there's lots of other ways to get +1 to hit. I'm not sure it's worth the points in most cases. For all those reasons, I put it in the D tier. Okay, so next we'll talk about the heroes as well as the exclusive commemorative series models. First up is Gobsprakk, alternatively Killaboss on Gutrippa Vulture. First of all, let me just say, I think this is a awesome looking model. I think it's a great centerpiece unit for the army, but I give it a C for value. Reason for that is it's 150 bucks. That's a big ask. You could buy a Dominion box for less. You can find discounts, get it for about 130. Now, I give it a C over like a D because I probably would have given it a D given that the unit, it's not worth a ton of points. Gobsprakk is 280, the Gutrippa Vulture is 240. For 55 bucks, you can pick up Snatchaboss, which is over 300 points and, adds a lot more to the army rules-wise as well. But I give it a C for value because this model is relatively easy to set up where you can swap out Gobsprakk and the Killaboss and the little chair on the top, whether you magnetize it or even if, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for the sake of your paints, but you could even just blue tack him into the top and then you just swap him out. The head being different on the Vulture doesn't matter. The little thing on the back doesn't matter. Just swap out the guy on top, and then you've got two big options for leaders in your army. So for that reason, it might be worth picking one of these up. I would definitely recommend doing that rather than buying two. S for aesthetic, like I mentioned, and I give it an A for gameplay. From a strictly competitive perspective, it's not run in a lot of competitive lists. I think a lot of people tried to make it work, but he's very fragile, especially Gobsprakk. But I think it's got big time, Timmy potential. It's like a big Vulture, and the Vulture does get poison attacks, which is cool. And I think it's got some Johnny potential as well with Gobsprakk, providing a lot of utility, but you got to keep him safe. For those reasons, I put both Gobsprakk and the Killaboss on Gutrippa Vulture right at the top of the B tier because I just think they're neat. Okay, next let's talk about one of my personal favorites, Swampboss Skumdrekk, or the generic version is the Snatchaboss on Sludgeraker Beast. This is an awesome model. I give it a B plus for value. It is 60 bucks, about 50 if you get it from other sources than GW. But for aesthetic, I give it an S, especially if you build it as Swampboss Skumdrekk. I would recommend, if you like how Swampboss Skumdrekk looks over the guy with the chain, the generic version, just build it as Skumdrekk, and you can call it either. You can run it as either. Nobody really cares when you're playing orcs. These aren't ultramarines. And then for gameplay, I also give it an S. It's a behemoth. It's probably the best hero, arguably, in Kruleboyz. Maybe him and the Swampcalla Shaman. And for units wholly within 12, when you roll a 6 and trigger venom encrusted weapons, you increase the damage of attacks by 1. This is pretty sweet. And it applies to himself too, of course, because he's wholly within 12 of himself. So whenever venom encrusted weapons is going off, you can really start to crank up the damage on your Boltboyz, for instance, and start to do some pretty scary things. So great unit. For all those reasons, I give Swampboss Skumdrekk, or the generic version, I put him in the A tier. Okay, next is the Breaka-Boss on Mirebrute Troggoth, a very popular unit in the army. For value, I give it a B. It's a pretty standard GW pricing scheme, $55 or $45 if you get a discount on it. It's 180 points on the table. It's a hero. It is not a behemoth, notably. For aesthetic, I give it a B minus. He's slowly growing on me. I'm not the biggest fan of the GW trolls, or Troggoths, if you want to speak in Games Workshop proprietary speech. But, he's kind of growing on me. I like it. It's cool. Not the coolest in my opinion, but I know a lot of people have a lot of love for this model. So if you like the trolls, I'm sure this is great. And then gameplay wise, I give it an A just because it's a lot of fun. I see it run in a lot of lists. I'm not sure how competitive it truly is, but it's a very fighty hero. And it's just very flavorful. You pull on the change, which injures the troll, and then he gets mad, so he does a lot more damage. And then the troll regenerates because he's a troll. So a lot of fun for all those reasons. I put him right in the middle of the B tier. I think it's a solid pickup. Okay, elephant in the room. Let's talk about Kragnos. I want to be clear here that I'm talking about Kragnos in Kruleboyz. Okay, so don't get upset if you're a big big Kragnos fan. But in Kruleboyz, I give him a value. I couldn't decide between C or B, so I hedged. I'd probably lean more towards C though. It's $170 or 145 if you get them for a discount. So the most expensive single model we're going to be talking about today. But it's over 700 points, so that's half a 2,000 point list right there, more or less. Aesthetic, I'll be honest, I give it a C. It's not my favorite centerpiece model in the game. I know a lot of people really love Kragnos, think he's a badass, and I can see why. It's a very well designed, well sculpted. I'm just not big into the Centaur, Minotaur, Beast of Chaos kind of look. So sue me. But gameplay wise, I give him a B with a heavy caveat that it's a B in Kruleboyz. It could be a lot of fun to try and make a Kragnos Kruleboyz list work. There's a lot of fun things you could do, charging in Kragnos along with the Sludge Raker Beast and a big blob of Gutrippaz, for instance, that you super sneakied right into your opponent's face and just trying to play Kruleboyz a little more like Iron Jaws. But I think he has much more of a home in other lists like Iron Jaws, like Ogre Maw tribes, for example. So that's why, overall, Kragnos for me, I put him in the C tier. No disrespect to the big guy, but, he's not an orc. This is a Kruleboyz tier list. So, okay, next is the Swampcalla Shaman, who certainly is an orc and certainly is bringing a lot to the table. He is an A for value in my mind. You get him in Dominion, and on eBay you can get another one for about $20. The reason he's $20 for just one guy is because you pretty much run him in every single Kruleboyz list because his ability is that good. The poisons that he can put out, you're doing your venom encrusted weapons on a 5 or 6 instead of just a 6. It's awesome. There's no way to stop it because it's not a spell. His spells are actually pretty good too, even though you're not going to use them very much because that's so good. Aesthetic, I actually give him a B plus. If you're running one of them, I'd give him more like an A plus. I think it's a great model. I think the Potgrot's awesome. The only reason I kind of take away from the aesthetic here is because you're going to want to run multiples of these. It's a monopose push fit unit. Unless you're kit bashing, which a lot of people do, they just look really samey for me. The pose is very unique, and having like 3 of these guys pouring the exact same liquid just kind of breaks up the look of the army for me, which is why I took some points off for aesthetic. Gameplay wise, S for all the reasons we already mentioned, and for that I put him in the A tier. Next up is the Killaboss on Great Gnashtoof. Let me just say I love this model. This is part of why I pre-ordered Dominion. This is what made me fall in love with Kruleboyz, was seeing this guy, riding around on that creepy hyena dog. It's just everything Kruleboyz. For value, I give him an A. Now, the reason for this is because you can get one on eBay for $15, which is super cheap for a really nice sculpt. The reason he's so cheap is because of the gameplay issue. I only give him a C for gameplay. He's not super competitive. He's solid enough at like 170 points, I believe, and 3-up save is nice. He has a reasonable attacks profile. His mount sadly does not get venom encrusted weapons, but he's just not quite up to snuff with the Breaka-Boss, with the Sludge Raker Beast, or with the, certainly not with the Shaman. So he's not run competitively much. And there's not much of a reason to run two of this unit. So that kind of takes away from the value if you already have a Dominion box or you already have one of these. Aesthetic, I give him an A. That does start to go down because he's mono pose. If you have two of them, they look exactly the same. There's not really easy ways to kit bash to make them look different. I'm sure you could get creative though if you really wanted to. I actually went ahead and put the Killaboss on Great Gnashtoof at the bottom of the B tier. I could see you putting him lower if you're a competitive player, but I like him. Okay, next is Killaboss with Stabgrot. This is actually one of my favorite models you get in Dominion as well. I know I keep saying that, but for value, same thing as the last one. I give it an A just because it's so dirt cheap on eBay. If you want one of these, you can get it for $9, or you get it in Dominion. So, if you wanted one just to make it with the other weapons option, you can buy it on eBay for $9. Now, granted, I would recommend building it with the shield for gameplay reasons, but gameplay-wise, it's still a D competitively. He's kind of slow. He's fighty enough. The Stabgrot rule is very flavorful and fun. I think he's fun to play. I don't think he's particularly competitive to play. Aesthetics wise, I give him an A+. I love that he's standing on a dead Stormcast, and the Stabgrot really, really takes the whole thing home for me. The Stabgrot's probably low-key my favorite Kruleboyz model. I had to, I put him at the top of the C. No disrespect to the Stabgrot. Okay, next, I love the Murknob with Belchabana. I know he's probably the worst hero that you get gameplay-wise in the Dominion box, but you can get him for $8. He is the first Kruleboy I painted. I've got the banner in my channel thumbnail because I just think he looks awesome. I love the Kragnos banner with the tongue, and there's a little maggot on the tongue. The details on this model are just on point. I give him an S for aesthetics, A for value. Sadly, not the strongest thing on the table, but the rules, to be fair, they're kind of fun. He's got a little bit of a 50-50 anti-magic ability. He craps out a couple mortal wounds if he's in combat. So, fun to play, not competitive. I had to put him in the B tier though because I love him. So, okay, the Cunning Krew next up. Right now, these are kind of hard to get a hold of, to be honest. You can get the Rivals of Harrowdeep from GW for $80, which is really steep. You do get the Stormcast Underworld's Warband as well, but don't buy that because you can get the whole Harrowdeep starter set on Amazon right now for the same price for $80, which really isn't so bad. On eBay, you can find this Warband for $40. Aesthetic, I give it an S. I think they did a great job with these. I think the little Hobgrot with the mask looks awesome. I love the two grots. Gameplay wise, I give it a C. It's fun. It's kind of cute. You get a 1 in 3 chance of getting an extra dirty trick. Not the most impactful thing. It is Grin and Blades keyworded, so just keep that in mind. I put the Cunning Krew in the C tier. If I were more of a competitive channel, they would not be below the Murknob, but I like the Murknob better. Okay, Mugruk Da Watcha. I love Mugruk Da Watcha. He is awesome, but he is so hard to get a hold of. He's a commemorative model, so he's only sold at events and a limited run series. I think the MSRP was like $40. I was not able to confirm that. I could not find anything online, and I have not had any conventions near me, so I was not able to find one to confirm this. I can tell you on eBay, I got mine for about $75. Here you say, budget, wow, you paid $75 for one model? Yeah, I did because I think he's cool, but it's not a good value. I'd say D minus if you can get it for the normal price, and an F if you pay what I paid for it for value. It's you can get the Swampcalla Shaman way cheaper, but it's nice to have some variety and gameplay wise, he's a Swampcalla Shaman, so S tier there. I put Mugruk Da Watcha squarely at the bottom of the C tier because it's very expensive. Last off, let's talk about Hagok. Uh, Hagok is another great model. Um, I have to give him an S for aesthetics again. I just think he's like awesome looking, but it's the same issue as Mugruk. He's an F for value. It's no longer available. I think it was about 40 bucks. Correct me in the comments if you went to an event and saw how much he actually cost. But eBay is running you about 75 bucks right now for one Gutrippa. He's a Gutrippa boss. It's kind of sad that he's not like some kind of a hero or maybe a stand-in for the Killaboss, but awesome looking model, pretty crappy in terms of value and gameplay utility. So, gotta put Hagok right down at the bottom of the D tier. It's nice of a model as it is. But anyway, this kind of wraps up our tier list. Let me know what you think. Largely value focused. I do think Dominion and that Warcry are great pickups. And then, of course, the Swampcalla Shaman and the Snatchaboss are just probably the most solid heroes that you can get in the army, which is why I put them in A. But let me know what you Okay, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much if you stuck with me here to the end of the video. I happy to make more tier lists like this if people are interested. If you like the video, throw a little YouTube love Budget Waz way. I always appreciate it. I read all the comments, and until next time, keep not spending hundreds of dollars on models that you don't paint. All right, take it easy. Bye.